Shirley Muldowney, the most successful woman in the world in motorsports competition. Last year on NBC Sports World, you saw her win an unprecedented third title at the 1982 World Championships. She is the only driver to win the NHRA Top Fuel title 3 times. In fact, no one else has ever won the title more than once. She has compiled more sub-6-second runs and reached 250 miles per hour more often than any other driver, including the legendary Don Garlits. Shirley started the 1983 season in championship form, winning the Winter Nationals at Pomona, California. But since then, she has not been consistent. Right now, the leading point setter on the tour is Gary Beck, her arch rival in Top Fuel competition.
We feel good right now. Gary is 500 points ahead of us. That is a half a race. We better start moving now if we're going to do something.
And here is 42-year-old Gary Beck, the overall points leader midway through the 1983 NHRA season. Gary is a former world champion, won the title in 1974. He owns the 10 quickest elapsed times in Top Fuel competition history. He's been that good a driver. But the last 2 years, Gary Beck has finished second to Shirley Muldowney in the overall championship standings at season's end. He wants to beat Shirley badly. Now we go to competition in the second round. And these super-powered rocket ships are ready to burn out the tires, a tactic used to heat up the rubber for better traction.
Not only does it heat up the rubber on the tires, Don, but it also heats up the racetrack. A pair of hot, sticky tracks that the crews will back these cars right over, staging the driver on top of his own burnout tracks. In the near lane will be Jim Head, a graduate mechanical engineer from Columbus, Ohio. Jim's still looking for his first big national event victory. He'll be up against, in the far lane, Connie Kalitta of YPSILANTI, Michigan. He was around back in 1955 when they ran the first big national championship race. Operates a very successful air freight service in Detroit.
Now, a most important part of any Top Fuel competition, the staging as they inch forward, preparing to time the takeoff with the all-important green light.
And Jim Head has red lighted, Don. He over-anticipated the start and gives this race to Connie Kalitta, who has a lot of sparks coming from the rear of his car.
Connie with the problem, it appears to be all right now. These Top Fuel dragsters running on tanks of nitromethane. Very highly flammable substance, but Connie's all right and does advance now with a second round victory over Jim Head on the foul.
As we look again at Jim Head's start, notice the front wheels on his dragster. They come up in the air almost immediately. That could have accounted for the red light, more so even than over anticipation on Head's part. They came up and out of the beam. Kalitta wins it at 597, 220 miles an hour, and all of a sudden in the far lane, Connie Kalitta's car starts to emit a fireworks show, really. And the color of the sparks tell you that these are magnesium sparks. There's something wrong in the clutch on Connie Kalitta's car. The sparks coming from the magnesium bell housing.
But despite it all, Connie Kalitta advances to the semifinals. Don Quickie with Steve Evans on a scorching summer day for the National Hot Rod Association's Summernationals at Raceway Park in Old Bridge Township, New Jersey. Second round competition in Top Fuel continues.
And this pairing will pit Joe Amato in the near lane against 20-year-old Scott Kalitta in the far lane. Joe Amato, a wholesale performance parts dealer from Old Forge, Pennsylvania, qualified number 2, is not to be ignored. 20-year-old Scott Kalitta, whose father Connie has already advanced to the semifinals, is really a professional racer. It's his job, along with crew chief Ron Barrow, to transport these cars around the country and maintain them. His dad Connie usually flies in one of his jets.
Steve, you mentioned earlier that you felt Amato was a dark horse in this competition. Could win it all. Why is that?
Well, he's got momentum, Don. He won in Montreal a couple of weeks ago. He's a number 2 qualifier. Everything's going for Joe Amato right now.
Not a good start for Amato. He smokes the tires and is well behind, but look at him recover, and Joe Amato advances to the semifinals.
Seldom will you see a driver recover and win a race as Joe Amato did here against Scott Kalitta. A beautiful start by both drivers, but suddenly Amato's engine develops too much horsepower for this track. The tires are ablaze, so Amato maintains his composure. He has to actually get off the throttle to allow those tires to hook up again. Now his speed on this run, Don, 250 miles an hour. It was that kind of top-end charge that paid off for Joe Amato. A very good drag race.
It was indeed Amato, a rising star on the Top Fuel circuit, and here is the points leader overall, Gary Beck.
Gary is one of the greatest competitors this sport has ever known, and he's driving the quickest top fuel dragster in the history of drag racing, the blue car in the far lane. Gary Beck from El Toro, California, the car owned by Larry Miner of Hemet, California. Gary will be racing in the near lane, Gene Snow from Fort Worth, Texas. Snow at one time a professional drag racer. Now does it just for the fun of it. The oil business has paid off big for gentleman Gene.
Snow qualified 8th in this top fuel field. Steve, it appears that Gary Beck has a problem as he approaches the start line. He's indicating something to his crew.
And the crew is trying to find out whatever may be wrong with this engine, and they don't find anything wrong with it. They're communicating with Gary. He says that it's bad, but they don't seem to be able to find anything to repair. And Gary Beck pulls to the starting line, apparently to race Gene Snow.
Well, we'll all find out together the moment of truth in drag racing, waiting for that amber light to go to green.
Gene Snow in the near lane, Gary Beck in the far lane.
They're away and Beck doesn't leave. There was a major problem. His car never got off the line.
Gary Beck didn't even attempt to leave the starting line. So Gene Snow wins it on a single run at 5.98 seconds, 237 miles an hour. And Gary Beck puts it in reverse and backs away from the starting line. We'll have to check with Gary to be sure, but I would guess that this was an oil pressure problem. The crew was frantically trying to find a loose oil line or something that would bring that pressure up to normal, Don.
A bitter disappointment for Gary Beck. And now Shirley Muldowney is ready for her second round run against a very good driver from Texas, Jody Smart.
And no one, Don, has more respect for Shirley Muldowney's abilities than Jody Smart. He's raced her a dozen times and has been a loser 11 of those 12 times. He's from San Antonio, Texas, a performance parts wholesaler, a nice guy that enjoys his drag racing very much. It's strictly a hobby for this guy.
But not a hobby for Shirley Muldowney. She's a full-time drag racer, and her success is evident with 3 world championships.
Shirley Muldowney, the pink car in the far lane. Jody Smart, San Antonio, Texas, in the near lane. They're staged and ready. It's a beautiful start by both drivers. Some smoke off the tires of Jody Smart, but it is still Jody Smart.
A major upset here, as John Muldowney knows that the Muldowney racing team is done for this day after all the preparation. It's rare they're upset, but Jody Smart with a major one here. So now the 2 top point standing drivers are gone, Gary Beck and Shirley Muldowney. So race day is over for Shirley Muldowney. And the semifinal pairings in top fuel are set. It'll be Jody Smart against Connie Kalitta, Joe Amato versus Gene Snow. With Steve Evans, Don Cricky back at the Summernationals as the fans work hard to keep cool. Earlier, Steve had a chance to catch up with points leader Gary Beck, who went out with a mechanical problem.
Gary, a good, strong burnout. You backed up. Everything sounded fine. No indication of any problems, and you just shut it off.
Well, Steve, what happened was the oil pressure of the engine dropped after the burnout. I had good oil pressure starting the engine and in the burnout and backing up, and it was fluctuating a little bit, and then a little dry hop, and we had 0 oil pressure. I mean, 0, not 20 pounds or 40 pounds, but 0.
And here is the man who was beneficiary of Gary Beck's mechanical problem, Gene Snow, who advanced to this semifinal round matchup against Joe Amato, a driver who's come to the fore on the top fuel circuit, having recently won the Canadian Grand National event at Montreal. Joe Amato in the far lane, Gene Snow in the near lane. The semifinal round of the Summernationals as they approach the start line. Yellow, then green, then they're off, and Joe Amato moving to the fore, and Amato drives to victory and advances to the final round.
Amato has consistently been 0.2 of a second quicker than Gene Snow. Even though Snow's crew put in all the nitromethane possible, Joe Amato took control immediately, and just a few hundred feet off the starting line, had a full car length on Gene Snow.
These top fuel dragsters literally detonate off the start line, and now Connie Kalitta is ready for his semifinal matchup against Jody Smart. This race to go against Joe Amato in the finals. We see the burnout. Jody Smart in the far lane takes a very long ride on his burnout with good reason. In past competition, Jody's found when he's cut short his burnout ride, the engine stalled, cut out, was unable to start it, so it's cost him competitions in the past, and now he takes the long run before the regular start. Steve?
The first thing Joe Amato does is check the cylinder block in his car because it's an engine that really shouldn't even be running. He torched ahead, as they say. Let's go back to the starting line and see who his opponent will be.
We'll find out whose turn it'll be in the finals against Joe Amato. In the near lane, Connie Kalitta. In the far lane, Jody Smart. Kalitta wants Jody Smart to stage. He's tired of that long burnout and the delay. Now they come to the start line. Connie Kalitta obviously upset before the start of the semifinal race. Getting ready for amber and then green, and they're away, and a fire breaks out in the car of Connie Kalitta.
Very unusual to see a fire like this right up the starting line, Don. At the finish line, maybe, but I've never seen anything quite like this. Jody Smart wins the race, but Connie Kalitta has suffered some dramatic engine damage. These cars hold like 12 quarts of 60-weight motor oil, and you just saw all 12 of them ablaze.
Connie Kalitta, Steve, was very upset before this race began, protesting the long burnout run of Jody Smart. And then when the race started, Kalitta's dragster broke into a ball of flame. Fortunately, the engine and top fuel competition are positioned behind the drivers. There was no injury, but we have an irate Connie Kalitta with serious damage to his dragster.
In the replay, we see Kalitta motioning to the starter, let me go down this racetrack. He wanted a single even before Jody Smart was up to pre-stage or stage. The starter said no, waited for both cars to get ready, and then kaboom. Connie Kalitta's engine just disintegrates. As I said before, this is the most violent fire I've ever seen in the starting line position.
A dramatic ending to the competition for the racing team today of Connie Kalitta, but fortunately no injury to Connie. It certainly looked to be far worse than that at initial impact.
The first fire that was visible came from the bottom of the engine, so it probably broke a connecting rod, punched a hole in the oil pan, and then the headers ignite the oil.
Steve, did Jody Smart's tactics play any part in this fiery end to Connie Kalitta's racing day?
In my opinion, absolutely not, Don. Jody Smart always does that long burnout for reasons you explained earlier. Most competitors, when they race Jody Smart, wait till Jody starts backing up from his burnout before they even start their engine. Connie Kalitta and his crew got in a hurry here and paid the price.
Connie Kalitta and his crew done racing for this day. Connie protesting here to competition director Steve Gibbs, but quite evidently to no avail because the race is over. It is final, and the top fuel competition championship round will match Joe Amato and Jody Smart.
The one piece of equipment a driver hopes he never has to use during the course of a race is the engine hoist. But in the Jody Smart camp, a fresh bullet being installed in the frame rails of his top fuel dragster. Crew Chief J.E. Christic, the man sweating so profusely in the yellow shirt, found a burned rod bearing in the motor that has so successfully taken them to the final round. With a crankshaft problem, you don't dare run that engine. It's just not safe for the driver or anybody around. So J.E. Christic winches the spare engine into Jody Smart's car. They have absolutely no idea how this motor will perform, but they will put the same fuel system off the other engine, the blower, the injectors, and that is really kind of the heart of the motor.
Well, we're all going to find out now just how well it does run as Jody Smart in the far lane inches to the start line for the championship run in top fuel competition at the 1983 Summer Nationals.
We heard Joe Amato say earlier how important lane choice might be. Well, Joe did not get lane choice. Jody Smart ran quicker in the previous round. He has his choice of lanes. He's taken the far lane. We'll see if that indeed is a factor.
Staging lights, counting down. There's the green light. They're away. Jody Smart smokes the tires, and Joe Amato takes command. He rockets to victory in the 83 Summer Nationals. His biggest win as a top fuel driver. Joe Amato, 38 years old, from Old Forge, Pennsylvania. Part of his crew, his wife, Jerry. And they've all got a lot to celebrate. The quickest elapsed time of the competition, 5.59 seconds in this final run. And remember, he did it with an engine block that has been cracked throughout this top fuel competition. Steve is with the new champion.
Joe Amato wins his second consecutive national event, has now got to rate right up there with the Gary Becks and the Shirley Muldowneys. Was there any point where you were concerned down the racetrack?
No, the minute the car left and it didn't shake and I was out 100 feet, I knew I didn't see Jody at all. I knew I had a good race going. Then when I got in high gear, he makes a big top end chart. I was just hoping nothing, sometimes you could blow the motor and he could come by you. But the minute I didn't see him coming and it was just buzzing along, it really made a good move.
Joe Amato with high praise for his chief mechanic Tim Richards as the Amato team wins the biggest event of their racing career, the 1983 Summer Nationals top fuel competition. Now for Steve Evans, this is Don Crickey. Glad you could be with us on NBC Sports World from the Summer Nationals at Englishtown, New Jersey.